Good morning, it's Norma Cowie, and I'm here with my metaphysical talk today. This is kind of an interesting topic for me because what happened was some friends phoned me up, and someone they had known had died, and they were wondering if I could check in how they were doing. I had done this for them before for somebody else. And so I agreed, but it brought to mind about the whole thing about death and dying. And I thought it was a good time to once more talk about life, the transition when we die, when we leave this life and go on. Now, I grew up with a certain amount of death occurring around me. My parents were older. They'd already had two children, and when they were pretty well adults, myself came along, and then my baby brother. And so my mom was one of the younger ones of a large family. And so we had a lot of family around at times. And of course, one by one, they began departing the physical. And it was a natural thing, somebody died, then you would go. I wouldn't be allowed to go to the funerals, but be around at the house after and things like that. So I grew up with a sense of continuance, that if a person left, that wasn't like the end. These will be part of the conversations, things that they did, and everything like that. As an adult, and I began to learn tarot, and with the tarot cards, in which I'm going to show you the death one. If you have never seen it, it really talks about transition and being reduced to the bare bones of who you are, because it's a skeleton on a white horse moving forward, and it's very symbolic. People are acknowledging the journey of this knight as he moves forward. And in the let me see, get the right side here, very back, there is a sun, because it is a journey, is it a transition? Unfortunately, it's not something that's talked about a lot, so the people are not aware of what to be prepared for. And also, it's like when that knock of, okay, your life has come to the end, now it's time to go, most people have no idea what takes place, what to expect, and how to deal and handle it, whether it's somebody that you care about that happens to, or even yourself. And so when I tuned into this person that had passed over, um, what it showed was the fear, not knowing what had gone on, like kind of, really, really being afraid. And then somebody was there to explain what was happening, and that person would be from the other side. And that person settled down and then began to get involved with the journey that they were on. Now, I've come in to check several days later, and it was a lady, and she was doing really well because she had a teacher. And people forget that the physical here has a counterpart in lots of ways, and people over there are there to help. It's like their job when they get used to being on the other side. We call it, the other side is over there. And so it's people help you over, that when you get over, whatever your inner philosophy is, will be the vibration that you will go to. On every vibrational level, there are teachers, and you have a choice. You can go to class, so to speak, and learn and grow and begin to get your vibration raised over there. A lot of us do it here, and so when we go, we kind of have an idea of where we're heading. And so it's very much aware. I think very often in life we forget life is kind of the playground to learn of what's happening, because we have endings in our lives. When we're young, we don't see that. Now, as I said, I had a lot of aunts and uncles that were leaving the planet. And because my mother's family was big, we weren't that close to my father's family. They were kind of spread out, and there were only five of them. My father was the youngest, but my mother was third from youngest. It was like, I think there were 12 children that were raised in the household. So there was a lot there. So there was a lot of experience, and sensitive me just, soaked a lot of things up to kind of be aware. And I'm very thankful for that. Not that my mom and dad went and carted us around everywhere, but we would be around in the community of the family, because the families would gather and discuss all sorts of things, which was, people, in fact, over the years, when my sister began having lots of children, they were all younger than me, and they say, all you want to do is sit and listen. But I learned that way. I learned and all the kids, I don't know, it was too rambunctious for me. Put me in a corner with a book, and I was really happy. So I want to talk a little bit more about what this death symbol symbolizes in life, because life has time periods, and you may have noticed already that things come to an end. So in this ending, there are three people in here there's the person on the horse, but there's a king that's laid down, the crown's fallen off. There is a priest who's doing the benediction as the soul is moving forward. And then there's a young woman that's got her head turned away, because very often we don't want to deal with the transitions. We don't want to deal with change. We just want it to go away. So there is a sense, and there's a young child sort of looking and observing everything. Transition happens in our lives. You cannot be my age and not realize that things begin and end. You start, some relationships go that way. I started my life in one country. I'm ending, more than likely, my life in another country. I've had lots of experiences where I've done certain things, and then they come to an end. There's an ending date on things. When you buy something, it'll say good until whatever. Unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, we don't know when our life ending date is. Some people have very early ones, so they kind of dip in and then they leave. And that's sad. It's very hard for parents to have to deal with a death of a child or someone that's really young. It really hits you, because it's like they haven't had any experience, but they have. They have had experience. And that maybe that's all they needed, because this life is only one of many. And that's the thing, when people don't realize how reincarnation works. Reincarnation is a kind of a redoing. I know I've explored so many lives, but I've learned so much. Male, female, way back. I haven't done too many forward lives, but you can. And I know my son in particular knows more about some of the older times than I do, because he's seen them, been there. And it's amazing sometimes what he would come up with as to his time period. And I've got a name not missing from my head, but it'll come back. Now, when a person makes a transition, mostly I have experienced is that someone comes for you to help you over. So that panic that I experienced with this person the other day, that was there. And it was very obvious. It was like, oh my God, what's going on? I don't know, freaking out. And then this person, very calming, comes in, and that's their job. See, people forget, when you go on the other side, you experience it, but if you stay there, you get a job. That's what we do here, right? We have jobs, we have things to do, places, I was going to say places to be, but that's true too. But it's like we grow into that position. There are many, 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 many different levels. You can only go, your soul can only go as far as what it understands from a spiritual nature. But in every level, whatever you want to call it, every step, every vibration you are, there are teachers, there are supporters, there are people there to aid you. The hardest thing is when everyone shuts down and doesn't want to know and doesn't want to see, one doesn't want to experience. It takes longer and it's harder. Yeah, I will admit that it is harder. But there are still people there helping to open up. Think of a clam, I don't want to know, I don't want to see, I don't want to, and then they just kind of, after a while, well, what is this? What is happening? And then you open up. So I always think it's like much easier just to be prepared that, okay, this is going to be a transition time, and who's coming. I have talked about how one time I thought I was dying when I had like a fever, and I've never had a fever like that before in my life. And I thought, oh, this is it. And then I realized there was nobody I knew. There was nobody had come for me. So I went, okay, I'm not dying. Like I went through the list of who it could be. No one's here. I'm not dying. And I certainly wasn't. I just had a fever and it felt funny. So it's like what happens is when you understand of transition, the movement, is you come into this. This is the sun. It's like you're being reborn in a sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're reborn back here. You're reborn in a vibration there. And a friend of mine explained to her father once when she was having a conversation with her dead father. He says, yes, I do know a lot of different people. And he explained that he was on a certain level and her mother was on another level. And he could go down and see the mother, but the mother couldn't come up to see him. Because the vibration of a soul will depend on this. And what is a soul's vibration is their spiritual awareness, their openness, the lovingness they have, the compassion that they've shown in life, and live by that. The need to help people, the need to be there. So, yeah, it's like when someone's mean and doesn't want to think of anybody else, there's not really big expansive on the other side. Doesn't mean they don't have a teacher come along and try and teach. And I say try and teach them because when a person's rigid in their mind about what happens on that side, it's difficult to then learn to let go and begin. And sometimes people choose to be born back, reincarnated, as we call it, reincarnated back here as they are without real growth. So they experience again similar things. That's why sometimes when we get into doing past life regressions, they can have many lives on the same theme because they didn't wake up, they didn't learn, they didn't expand, they didn't grow. So what are we really here for is really to understand more. I mean, I have studied metaphysics for so many years, and I'm being a psychic, primarily beginning learning and becoming a psychic, and past life regression being such a big part of my world. I saw myself in so many lives, doing so many things, making decisions, knowing that the decision that you make is so important because the decisions are strong. You can have a thought that can easily change, but decisions are like a knot in your evolution. And so when we have the sun here, what I love about this is like refreshing. You are bright. You are moving forward as a child because there's lots to learn. Just because we become old in the sense of years, become white-haired, have experiences, there's a lot more experiences to have in evolution of around Earth. Now, let's talk about Earth for a moment. When people come here, let's say you're being on some other planet, which can happen. What I discovered is that this planet is an emotional planet, and it's rare. Most planets where people reside, they may not look like us, but there's that essence of who they are, and whichever way they look on that particular planet is mental thinking. And a lot of people arrive here not realizing that this is an emotional planet. I believe this solidly, that this planet is alive. It feels. And I've had experiences that reinforce that. One could say, well, if you think something, then it's reinforced. Well, that could be too. But I've had many conversations deep down on the earth with which I call the Earth Mother, and it is very alive, and it feels, and it's. And the other thing I have, and I've talked about this before, when I was at a Buddhist walking on the earth and learning how to walk, how the Buddhists walk, which is very slowly, a heel through. I felt the earth on the grass. You wouldn't feel us on the tarmac or anything, but on the earth, when you do that, you feel the earth take you and then support you as you move forward. That was a big breakthrough for me at the time. And that's a lot of years ago now. And I began to appreciate, I began to seek out what was deep down and really felt in the Earth Mother. And I made a connection at that time. Well, within a short time, because I began to realize, oh my goodness, this is an emotional planet. This is a feeling planet. So what happens when people arrive here that have been only on mental planets, and all of a sudden this place has all these feelings going on? And that's why a lot of people, they don't really know what's happening or what should happen. They have many lifetimes before they kind of wake up. Oh, I've got to feel. I know over the years, very often when I'm working with people, I'll say, you've got this mind, yes, but you also have a feeling mind, which is in your body, and you need to bring the two together rather than be up here or down here. If you're too emotional, that can have great ramifications. If you're too mental, then you don't have that feeling that goes on that says, where are we heading and where are we going? And life doesn't feel like this beautiful sun symbol that says life awaits. Go for it. So what do we do is become aware of our feelings. Yes. Become aware of the mental and make sure they begin to work together. It's very easy to be in the mental because we don't have to feel. But when you take what you know and you put the feeling behind it and work with it, what it does is it adds a dimension. So let's go back to the death process, because what I find is most people don't want to think about it. Like, oh my goodness, but because as I said earlier, I had a family where a lot of older people that one by one were dying, and I had to wrap my head around from what I was, just because I was quite young, learning from the institutions of church. And it wasn't making sense to me at all. Didn't make sense, because I knew these older people very well. And some of the things I was being taught about the death process was nothing. It was being taught. So I was having to listen to as people talked, and as the years went by. Actually, it wasn't something that happened overnight or when I was really young, but I slowly began to understand. It's like taking off a suit of clothes and letting the inner being transcend into the vibration that you really, really are. And you need a heart for that. You could have all the intellect in the world, but if you don't have a heart, if you don't have compassion and awareness and your heart, then it's like, where do you go? Because although the mental is appreciated on the other side, in relation to Earth, The earth is a feeling place. And so there's a lot here about that. And I've met some wonderful people who aren't in physical form over the years. I had some great teachers, great teachers. They taught me a lot. And they didn't have a physical body, but they were very real. And their job, their duty was to aid and help us humans as much as possible. For those of us that wanted to learn, they were there. And it was really interesting because over the years, as I learned, new guides would come in. And it would be like I was handed over, you might say, to the next teacher, next level, as we moved through, until I had one teacher that lasted for a long time, until I got very ill and couldn't work, and he had to move on a little more. And I understood that. It was like I understood it. Don't waste time to me when there's so much else work to do. And I have had the knowledge, and I have been in places where I have seen and understood. So transition, let's go back to the transitions you have in your life. When you look back, I think if you're over 30, you can see the transitions you have, because things change. When you're up to about 30, we kind of don't always get conscious until we're maybe into our 30s, because it's like there's things to do in places and you're looking and things are happening fast. But once you get over 30, there's time for reflection. There's time to recognize what's working and what doesn't work, and how all that fits together. Until finally it comes, get my age, you kind of think, okay, when does the real big transition happen? And how's it going to happen? Because usually the body has to shut down one way or the other, hopefully gently and easily, and it's an easy transition. But it also could be fast. We don't want one of those ones where 1 minute you're alive, next minute you're gone. But anyhow, it is something we all face and we all deal with. But I really want you to understand that you do not do that process by yourself. If you have any spiritual learning, if you have any spiritual awareness at all, you will be supported in that journey. And even if you don't, there'll be people there that want to help if you allow it. And that you will go to the level that you can, and I'm going to say, use the word handle, like that you're comfortable with. Now this is going to sound a little bizarre. One of the things, when I was doing a lot of work a number of years ago, I was shown how souls came to Earth, because this is part of a soul's progression of learning here, because there's not many feeling planets out there. Most of them, as I've said, are mental. And I was shown how sometimes people arrived singly, sometimes they arrived in a small group, sometimes they arrived in a big spaceship. And I often wonder, I'm a wondering mind. I have a mind that likes to put things together. There was a time when from England, they sent people to the US and Australia. They packed them up. My own father's family left England. They weren't sent, but they saved enough money to go steerage and went to Australia to start a new life, because at the Civil War in the States affected England, because I get my greats mixed up. My great-great-grandfather worked in the cotton mills there. When the war came in the States, the cotton couldn't get to England, and he lost his job because there was no cotton to do. And it was a job that takes a lot of dexterity, and you have to know what you're doing. It wasn't just moving stuff around. It was very, very, anyway, through the census that they did in England probably every 10 years, we watched the journey of my great-great-grandfather way back then, as he went from this very technical man to doing this and that, and ended up, his last census had the word scavenger, which meant he went around to find out what he could find to maybe sell or do whatever. And that's what happens to our lives here. Our lives are not written that they're going to be a certain way. They're not saying everything is fine now. And we forget when everything is flowing really, really well, we forget that there's going to be a circumstance happening somewhere else that's going to affect us, which can happen. So as a result of what happened, people were also in my father's family. His parents had already lost 2 children before they left England. My father was born in Australia right after they were. It's quite a family story, actually. And he was the 5th living child. They'd already lost 2 before they left England. Circumstances weren't great. They paid, I think, £10, which would have been quite a lot to put together. And they were in steerage on one of those boats that take forever. And my grandmother, who had these other 4 kids at different ages, was pregnant the whole trip to Australia. And there's another story of then how the family had to go and try and find work. And when Sydney, where they landed, was in depression. And they managed, because my grandmother did automatic writing, and the guides told her to tell her husband where to go. And it got them a job cutting wood, if you would believe. But anyway, circumstances of knowing that we have help if we know how to utilize it. I know many times, on Monday nights when we do mental mind treatments, it's not just for fun, because I believe in the talk that the prayer essence, because I deliberately looked for a prayer way, and it didn't feel right to be pleading and imploring to please, please, please. I didn't get that. And when I learned first how to do these prayers years ago, I've never given that up, because it's communication to the forces that are there for you. What you believe, what you know, I think it's important that people realize that when they feel or think that they're dying, to look around who's there to help them. Look around. It may be somebody you know, it may not be, but it'll be a loving heart. Believe me, it will be a loving heart that helps you leave this physical body into the essence of who you are. You can't hide the soul. The soul is the soul. We can make outside look all sorts of things in ways, but the soul is definitive, and it's part of the learning and the growth that we have. I just wanted to make sure I covered myself. There was a little niggle about people landing here. There was 2 movies I watched probably in the 80s that had very similar themes. And one was a place where souls were coming into Earth, and then there was the person sitting there at the desk and kind of welcoming them and saying, oh, you go here in this way, and you can go there and that. And that movie. And then there was another one where the fellow had a bus, and he went around and collected people who are ready to leave this planet to go and do the soul journey. And I can't remember the names of them, but they were very, very interesting if you knew anything about how the other side interacts with present physical beings. But 2 things I want you to remember that I totally believe is that this is not just a physical planet, it is an emotional planet. And that's why so many people have difficulty with between the mind and the heart, and realize the emotions are a key of how your body works. And mentally, you don't cut it off here. You feel and you become what there is. I know through past life regressions, through psychic readings, through doing many things, I've never considered myself like a medium where people come in and talk through you. But I've been taught lots of different things. And there are, when I want to feel and know about a vibration, I can tune in. Life is exciting if you know that it's here for you to grow, to understand, and to be at one with all that there is. I want to thank you for watching and listening. And we've had some new subscribers come in lately, and I keep forgetting to say thank you because I get a little notice saying so and so subscribe to you, and I appreciate those. So those of you that are listening this morning, thank you. Appreciate that. Karen B, as usual, good morning to you too. And Yvonne, I probably need to talk to you on the phone. So Yvonne, good morning. And then Karen just put, very interesting. As an RN, I have worked in obstetrics, welcoming souls, and oncology as souls departed. Yeah. Soul arise, we have our body, and then the soul departs for sure. It's and that's what these two symbols represent. Leaving and moving into a new transition, a new vibration. And that's why I picked those two today, because they have been very instrumental in change. Life changes. We are part of changes. Trustingly, we have a philosophy that helps us deal with things. They're, in a sense, a circle. When do things begin? When do things end? Who knows? We're a circle. And there's other aspects there, so many of them, to learn, to grow, and to be. And so that's my metaphysical talk this Wednesday, and I trust it helps. I trust. And remember, you can always email me if you have another question, and I'll add about anything like this, and I can create another talk when I'm doing and add the answers to that. Miss your hearts, I'll be back on Sunday, and for a short little Sunday thought. And probably in the next couple of days, I'm going to do another Are You Aware? In the meantime, you have a great day. Bye now.